Hello, everybody. You're listening to episode 16 of 8 Minute Movies, Knives 8, a podcast talking about the 2019 movie Knives Out in 8-minute chunks, presented by me, Kieran, and him, Peter. This is a sequential podcast that contains spoilers for Knives Out, so you should go watch the movie first before listening, and start this podcast with episode 1 of this season. Peter, it's the final episode. The final episode. We made it. What a thrill.
Yes, it's been such a pleasure to make this film with you.
Yes, we made the film, as we discussed earlier. In no way was anyone other than us responsible for the creation of this movie. Not even the actors.
No.
As is tradition at the end of the season, I assume that you're ready to summarize how you felt about the film in the form of a brief haiku.
I am not.
Okay. Sometimes I wish you'd just run with my my excellent plans.
Okay, look, here we go. Let's see. I thought it was good.
Yep.
The film made me very pleased.
Okay.
Let's watch it again. There we go.
Okay. I feel like that's not a haiku, but
yes, it is.
Good enough. It's fine. It's fine. We won't argue. Of course, anything is a haiku if you just believe hard enough. So I'm quite excited for the last episode. I'm all a shiver.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to proceed from here.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've moved.
Yeah, it's over. It's finally done.
Yes, I've moved from one place to the other. I don't need to go back to the old place anymore. So it's really happened now.
I've got to admit, it brought a tear to my eye to go back to your flat and just burn it to the ground after you'd left. Yes, yeah. For the money.
What money? Doesn't belong to us.
I assume someone gets some money, and I get to start a fire.
No, we got our deposit back because I spent several grueling hours just getting all of that life gunk that builds up in a place over the course of many years. Ugh, it was not pleasant. It was probably one of the busiest weeks of my life. But it's done now. I can relax here. The microphone is set up. I can record a podcast. What more can you ask for?
I think this was literally the first thing I insisted you set up.
Well,
Get in.
It was easy. A lot of the reason that I wanted to set this up quickly is not only because of recording this podcast, but because the little key that gets me into Final Fantasy 14 is attached to this microphone stand. And so I needed it to be accessible for both of these tasks.
I forgot that you had an RSA key to log into a game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to attach it to something that I was unlikely to lose, and this microphone stand seemed to fit.
Yeah, genuinely would be quite hard to lose a 3-foot long, like, steel microphone stand, I suppose. I can't argue with that.
I just thought, if I attach it to anything that is in any way portable, I'm going to lose it within a week, and then it's going to be difficult to get into my account again. And so I thought I will attach it to something that is that you can attach a keyring to, but is also just not going anywhere.
Like a child.
Yeah. There was recently a patch released for Final Fantasy 14. You can now live on your own island and just wander around it and gather things and tend to crops and build little buildings on it. And
can you make that be the whole game if you want?
I mean, you do have to get to level 90 before this feature is unlocked.
Okay, that feels like the answer to that question is no, then, isn't it?
No, I mean, if once you got to level 90, you just wanted to do that,
you want to retire.
That's fine, but it would probably be quite boring because stuff happens on fairly slow cycles on the island, and so there'd be a lot of just kind of waiting.
Yeah, I mean, you did describe it to me before, and I felt it sounded a bit like sort of 3D Animal Crossing.
Yeah, a little bit. It's, I mean, without the island friends, you've got no visitors really. You're just hanging out there on your own, which is many times you've described that as your kind of ideal state of existence, just going far away to some sort of isolated spot somewhere where nobody can bother you.
Yeah, I often consider buying a second Elite Dangerous account just so that I can go vertically out of the plane of the galaxy and just be like, bye.
Yeah, I wonder whether it would look like a galaxy if you got far enough out.
Do you mean in real life or in the game?
In the game, if you got far enough out, would it start looking like the Milky Way galaxy?
There's a character in the Larry Niven books called Louis Wu who all humans are basically immortal at this point in society, and he gets so fed up with humans periodically that he does what he calls a sabbatical, which is just getting in a single person spaceship with like a faster than light drive, pointing it out of out of the human sphere of influence, flying away for basically ever until he gets so desperate for human contact that he comes back. And I'm like, oh, big mood, honestly.
I've done that in Elite Dangerous, honestly, before.
Yeah. Didn't you do the quest to the core or whatever, Sagittarius A star black hole?
Yeah, I've done that, but I've also done pointing it in a direction where I'm like, oh, what hasn't been very explored? That doesn't look very explored, and just pointing it in that direction, just going there for as long as I can stand, and then eventually turning back. Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's a very relaxing game in some ways.
I do keep meaning to get back into Elite Dangerous, but for some reason, when I logged out the last time, I'm near a space station and I can't remember how you dock. So
yeah, I've got a fairly decent knack for it, but I can understand why people find it difficult. I like the controls of the game because it does actually feel a bit like you're driving something.
Yeah, I think I was fairly okay at docking. It's just that it's been about 7 years since I played it.
Yeah, it feels just technical enough to make you feel like you are actually operating a massive machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Anyway, how are you?
I am okay. I'm fine. This is the last episode. I'm excited and sweaty.
Been up to anything?
I was going to ask you a quick question.
Go on.
Where are we at on starting our true crime podcast? Did I say podcast? Fine, we'll roll with it.
You did.
A podcast. A podcast is something different than a regular. Where are we at on starting our true crime podcast about your murderous neighbor? Is that still on the cards or?
Well, as I said, there was a sighting of the potential murderee.
Yeah, but the thing is, I was thinking about it between episodes, and I think that you might have been fooled. You know, like how in Home Alone, the kid sets up like standees in the window to wave to, fool Harry and Marv into thinking that that there are people in the house. I think that it might be that.
Right. Well, I have said hello to her, and she said hello back.
But did it sound like a recording?
No.
Oh.
And she was walking around.
I don't think we're ever going to get to record a true crime podcast about your murderous neighbor.
No, I did. I had an idea for a podcast. Actually, it's not quite a true crime podcast, but it's one that I think should be done in the style of a true crime podcast. Is solving people's really trivial mysteries that they bring us.
Is this about me losing my keys?
No, actually, I was thinking about Smithy's calf.
Oh fuck! All right, that's gonna require some explanation.
Right. So Smithy's calf is it's an advert. If you search for it, it's Smithy's. You can probably guess how that's spelled, and then calf is spelled KAFF. Just so you know. Search for the advert of that, and then maybe pause the recording. Once you've watched that, come back, and the rest of this will make more sense. Okay.
Or if you don't want to do that, just skip ahead slightly.
Yeah.
Or just listen to us as if we were just a charming noise nearby.
Yeah, or watch it later. So anyway, yeah, it's a very bizarre advert where at the end, the narrator of the advert says, "Where is Smithy's calf? Calf, calf." Find out. And doesn't say where, just says find out. Now, we don't know where Smithy's calf is, and it doesn't seem to exist anymore, but someone must know where Smithy's calf is. And I thought it would be a very funny concept for a podcast to cover basically the finding of Smithy's calf and other similarly trivial mysteries that don't really matter. But someone nevertheless wants to find the solution for. So yeah, that's my idea for a podcast, is a true crime podcast, but without the crimes, just with some sort of mystery that someone wants to solve. I'm
down for it. I've got to admit that after I watched the Smithy's calf advert, it might have been because I had COVID and hadn't slept for like 40 hours at the time. I did spend quite a lot of time rolling around Google Maps of Yorkshire looking for cafes with a similar frontage.
You've made one mistake. It's not in Yorkshire. It's in the East Anglia region.
I meant wherever it was. I was just using Yorkshire as a stand-in for somewhere that's not London. Please don't at me, listeners. My geography is absolutely fucking terrible. I was hoping he wouldn't call me out on it, but he has.
Yes, as we know, there's London, Yorkshire, and then Scotland and Wales.
Yeah, that's basically it. Manchester's in Yorkshire, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
It is, yes.
Yeah,
it's in West Yorkshire, I think.
We're going to get letters about this. I swear, I've been to the north. I like the north. I was in Birmingham the other week. It was fine.
Some people would argue that Birmingham is
in the Midlands.
Not the north, yeah. You've just angered a different set of people now. Well, I think you should quit while you're ahead.
Look, I love the north. I've been to Reading. I endured Reading once for several hours. It was fine. I didn't die.
Yeah, I love the north. I'm often visiting the Isle of Wight.
Oh, sweet merciful God. I thought of all the contentious things that come out of my mouth during this fucking podcast. It wouldn't be the fact that I don't know where places are. I'm sorry. I've got soft brain. It's not my fault.
Oh, well.
If it's outside the M25, I'm not really sure where it is. I think we mentioned in an earlier season that it turned out that I didn't think Africa was where it is. Africa's a continent. How do you expect me to figure out where cities are?
I just think, I mean, you just move on at this point.
I've looked at maps; they just don't go in.
Let's just move on.
Oh dear. Well, okay. Have I been doing anything else much less contentious than that? No, I haven't. Is the answer?
Oh, right, okay.
Did I mention I'd been playing Cult of the Lamb last time? I think I did talk about that a bit.
I think we've talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I finished that now. I finished that game. It's still very good, very entertaining. Sort of like Animal Crossing, except you can murder people who you find slightly irritating.
Mm.
I went to see a film. Yes.
Which one?
Yeah, it was called The Invitation. Which I at the time I went to see it, it had a rating of 27 out of 100.
Right. Oh, okay.
And I'm going to spoil it quite heavily now. So
Right.
like, you know, the usual deal where we start this podcast by talking about weird spoiler-ridden things. If you want to go and see a movie which 3/4 of people who saw it thought it was not that good, then then skip ahead a couple of minutes. Okay. So The Invitation is a vampire movie, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you that at any point. It's you know, before you go in, it's like, oh,
it doesn't tell you that at any point during the film.
No point. No, at the end of the credit. You know, I hadn't finished that sentence.
Right. Okay.
There were additional clauses to that sentence that you trampled all over.
No. At this point, I'm imagining a film in which nothing much happens, and then at the end of the film, someone, as you're walking out of the cinema, someone hands you a piece of paper that says that was a vampire film on it,
or a flyer that says Dumbledore is gay.
Yes, right.
So up front, there's no sort of like big vampiratorial revelation or whatever. It's a word. Shut up. And and I know we shouldn't record these late in the evening. You get sassy. But basically, a woman finds out that she has surviving family, like all of her immediate family is dead, and she lives in New York and they live in England, and they're like incredibly rich toffs. So they invite her to come over and like for a family wedding to, you know, meet everybody and like get along. And it turns out that one of them is a terribly ancient vampire who actually name drops himself as Dracula at one point. And the families have been serving him for generations, and they all have sort of Dracula related names. Like his butler is called Mr. Renfield, which I didn't pick up on because they mumble his name quite a lot throughout the film.
Okay.
But like, and it sort of just ticks through story beats. Like every time, like there was no point in it where I was surprised by something that happened.
Right.
And I was like, to me, it sort of felt like, I know it obviously isn't, and this is preposterous, but it felt like the sort of movie you would make if you owned the copyright to Dracula and it was going to expire unless you produced a new Dracula movie, like Hellraiser 12 or whatever, you know, like where the rights will revert to the original copyright holder unless you produce a film. Weirdly, for like a it just felt kind of soulless.
Right.
I don't know, like and every all the story beats are so telegraphed. It's like, okay, well, she's going to fall in love with him here. Excellent, yes.
And
And
there you go.
Oh, the ending is so I won't spoil it in case you want to watch it, but I mean, like, you know,
it's not great.
It's fine. It's fine. It's a fine movie. I'm probably seeming harsher than I actually. I mean, I watched it, and like, you know, the 2 hours passed. I wasn't sick or anything. I wasn't like, I hate this. I was just like, yes, this is a film. Well done. Excellent. Competent workmanship all round.
So there you go, everyone. The invitation for an entirely forgettable movie experience.
It extremely workmanlike. It's got Sean Pertwee in it, and he's quite good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an actor. He was in Event Horizon. Yeah,
it's lucky he was an actor, really.
Fuck you. I knew you're such a little shit.
Really, really lucked out with that one.
What did you want me to say?
I don't know. He had good mise en scène. I don't.
He had excellent mise en place. Look. I know two things about him.
Okay.
All right, three things now. One, I know two films he was in, and the third thing is his dad was one of the Doctor Who's. Was the third Doctor. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
John Pertwee. That's his dad. Yeah.
Yep. Pertwee.
Yep. It's a good name.
Pertwee.
Listeners, try saying Pertwee aloud, no matter where you are. If you're on the bus,
try whispering it conspiratorially to the person next to you.
Select a random stranger, write the word Pertwee on a single piece of paper, slip it to them, and then hurry away.
Yes.
I cannot stress that you absolutely should not do that.
Do it in such a way that they don't notice. If we can get enough people doing this, then maybe it will make the news.
Maybe it will lead to the downfall of society. Oh, this is going to end with somebody slipping me a bit of paper that says fucking Pertwee, isn't it?
Mm.
Every time I mention something like this on this fucking podcast. Oh, Christ. Okay. And some other exciting news. I went to play Resident Evil 4 earlier, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I saw you attempt to.
Yeah, I tried to launch it 3 times, and it didn't work.
Mm.
But then I didn't feel like trying to figure out why it didn't launch.
Well, what a tale.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I spent perhaps 2 minutes on it. Yeah. It's a good story, isn't it?
Shall we move on to the heft of the podcast?
Yeah. Let's move on to the girth. No, I'm very uncomfortable now. Let's move on to the podcast meat. Let's go back to that old meaty chestnut.
The crux.
The pod crux.
Yes.
Sounds like the thing you have to find to make us stop podcasting, honestly. My notes say introduce game with bells. No, I'm not doing it. I refuse.
I mean, I don't know where the bell is at the moment. So
your bell is in a box. Mine is. I think it's fallen behind my air conditioner.
I think it's upstairs. I'm not going upstairs.
Hang on, I'm going to produce a perfect ding like a bell. Ding. There we go.
Oh, uncanny.
Yeah. You know, and it's a thing. Like, you know, it's part of the rules of the podcast. We explain it every episode, even though we don't need to. So do that.
I'll just point out that you said the word, and I will now say ding.
Which word did I say?
You said, and I can say this because I'm talking about the game thing.
Yeah, okay. Oh dear. Let's not talk about the thing, Peter. For the final time this season, what wouldn't you not like to not hear about?
I do not know what is left. Just tell me. Put me out of my misery.
Would you like to hear about Frank Oz?
I thought we'd already done Frankos, but apparently not. Let's go for it.
Well, no. Now that you've said that, you've made me extremely concerned.
Do you just want to check whether we've done Frankos?
Like, I don't think we did, but I have all my notes here and I can check. Listeners, we're doing it live. No, we didn't. You're an imbecile and a buffoon.
I think it's probably just that I said Frankos as a
Yeah.
suggestion once, and that stuck in my craw. All right.
Yeah, well, you're wrong. You're wrong, and I hate you.
Wow.
I hate you for your wrongness.
Explain Frankos to me.
Shouldn't record these later. Oh, right. Frank Oz is in this movie playing Alan Stevens, the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Oz, born Frank Richard Osnowitz, May 25th, 1954, is a British-born American actor, filmmaker, and puppeteer. He began his career as a puppeteer performing the Muppet characters of Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, and Sam Eagle in The Muppet Show, and Cookie Monster, Bert and Grover in Sesame Street. He is also known for the role of Yoda in the Star Wars series, having puppeteered and provided the voice for the character in several films and television series. His work as a director includes The Dark Crystal, 1982, The Muppets Take Manhattan, 1984, Little Shop of Horrors, 1986, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, 1988, What About Bob, 91, In and Out, 1997, Death at Funeral, 2007, and an episode of the US television series Leverage. You've definitely seen some of those, Peter. I know you've seen Little Shop of Horrors because I like it a lot and I watch it quite regularly.
I didn't know he directed What About Bob?
Wow. What is What About Bob? I didn't know that one. I've not seen it.
It's a comedy starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss about
he's not neurotic, is he? And he's always sort of like, I have seen it. Wow.
Goes to visit his psychiatrist while he's on
holiday. Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, I haven't thought about that film in forever. I remember being fairly entertained by it as a child.
Me too.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that was very exciting. For a minute there, I thought you might have seen a film that I hadn't seen, which would be fucking unprecedented. Listeners, as we've discussed at length, Peter was never shown films up until the age of 39. And when he first saw one, reacted much as those people who saw that first film reel of a train coming towards them as if, oh, the train, it's going to run us over.
I'd have gone with that War of the Worlds radio broadcast or something like that.
Yeah, have you seen The Dark Crystal?
No, I actually haven't. I've seen a little bit of the recent TV series, but not very much.
Yeah, it's the TV series is quite good. I don't like The Dark Crystal. I don't enjoy it because everything in it is kind of gross to look at.
Yeah,
and the Skeksis are really fucking annoying to listen to. But the TV series tones down all of their more annoying qualities from everything and is much more watchable. It's very, I enjoyed it a lot. And they got cancelled because A, it was very, very expensive, and B, I think season 2 was going to be about a Gelfling genocide. So,
wow,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's like a whole population of them in the TV series, and in the film, there's 2 left. So, oh boy, yeah. How entertaining can we make our puppet show about giga death. But yeah, no, it's very well made, very well directed. I just personally don't like it that much because the puppets are kind of gross to me.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Yeah,
Mm.
they were never that visually appealing to me.
In addition to performing this variety of characters, Oz was one of the primary collaborators responsible for the development of the Muppets. He performed as a Muppet performer in over 75 productions, including Labyrinth, video releases, and television specials, as well as countless other public appearances, episodes of Sesame Street, and other Jim Henson series. His puppetry work spans from 1963 to the present, although he's semi-retired from performing his Muppet characters in 2001. Do you want to guess how Rian Johnson met him?
Was it during Star Wars?
Yeah, it was while they were making Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and asked him to appear in Knives Out.
Nice.
Oh, it's nice when the connections are easy and obvious. I don't have to do any research.
Well, I always thought that it was a really good decision. I think we might have even talked about this during when we brought up The Last Jedi. I always thought it was a good decision to use puppet Yoda for that.
Yeah.
It just sold it a lot more to me. It felt more like old style Yoda, both because of that, but also just because of the way that he was written in that scene.
Yeah. He's certainly one of the more memorable bits from the more recent Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Now it's time for me to answer your questions from the previous episode. Ooh, you had a question.
Did I?
Yes.
What was
it was about how common the expression "in for a penny, in for a pound" is in America.
Yeah.
And the answer is I don't know.
Okay.
I did some research and I couldn't find out. However, I did find out that an alternate phrase is slightly more common: "in for a dime, in for a dollar."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, so they
do use that. Yeah.
You've just got to find your your local equivalent and use that. Polish listeners, if you have something that's like "in for a zloty," then please write in and tell us what it is. I was sorry, I got a bit hung up on idioms like that where it requires a rhyming scheme, because there must be something similar, but probably not a transliteration.
Yeah. I suppose it doesn't really need to rhyme.
No.
But I guess the rhythm works better in some languages than others.
In for an X, in for a Y. So that's fairly on brand. A slightly disappointing answer to a question. We don't know. I looked it up, couldn't find out. It's fine.
Okay.
So I guess with that, unless you have anything you'd like to say, it's time for us to start watching the last bit, isn't it? So we better review your answers, your final answers, because I guess I'm not going to ask you these questions after this episode because it's the last one, isn't it?
Yes, that's how this works.
So if you were seeing this for the first time, who do you think the murderer is, and how did they do it? You reckon that it was Ransom all along? Well, you don't actually. You think that Harlan killed himself because Harlan killed himself.
Yes.
But Ransom was trying to do a murder, and Marta was innocent all along.
Yes. Yeah. Ransom was ultimately responsible.
As he says in the last episode, what do you got me for? Attempted murder? And it's still pretty bad, dude.
Yeah. Like, even if Marta hadn't noticed the medicines and had accidentally overdosed him on morphine, if Ransom hadn't done what he had done, she would have had the antidote stuff on her, so that would have been okay. So yes, he was, and then the following bit wouldn't have happened anyway, so he was still ultimately responsible for the death.
The minimum sentence for attempted murder is 6 years in prison, which that's quite a long time.
That's a big old chunk.
And you said what happens next, and should I go through this because you got it pretty spot on?
I would say I got it pretty spot on, but the one part that I missed is that there is a conversation between Marta and Blanc that I don't think I really mentioned.
No, you didn't. So we've got Marta throws up into Ransom's face. She lied. He is a murderer. He realizes, repeats in for a penny, grabs a knife and tries to stab her with it, but it's a stage knife. He looks embarrassed, says shit, then gets taken away.
Yes.
The family look on from outside as Marta stands on the balcony with her My House mug, and then the film ends. Oh, and Linda reveals the invisible writing on Harlan's letter.
Yes, I did mention that bit. So just the conversation that I didn't mention.
Yeah. So very good. I mean, that's sort of what I'd expect really from a movie like this, is that you remember the start quite well and the end quite well, and you get a little bit fuzzier on the details in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, time for us to start the last little bit. We're going to be watching 2 hours to 2 hours and 10 minutes and 6 seconds because we didn't want to do episode 17 about 2 minutes of credit. Don't fucking at me. Of Knives Out. Marta throws up in Ransom's face.
And it's very chunky.
Oh, I tell you, I'm really glad this was the start of an episode. It was such a fantastic cut. I swear I didn't do it on purpose. It just panned out this way. Brilliant.
Well, in many ways, you couldn't have done this on purpose because that would have involved predicting that for the third season of this podcast, we were going to do Knives Out, and then figuring out what minute chunks we would have to split it into in order that we get that cut, and then in order to cover your tracks, deciding on 2 different films to do first, which is quite elaborate.
You don't think I'm capable of such a Xanatos gambit?
I just don't think you did.
No, I didn't. Yeah. You're right. I mean, I'm just happy it coincidentally came out this way. Very serendipitous.
It was probably one of my favorite kind of cuts that we've had between 8-minute chunks.
Ryan Johnson says he likes to watch this bit of the film with an audience to see who realizes it when, based on Marta's expression, the stilted speech into the phone, and her eyes are sort of welling up with tears, which I've never noticed. And I wrote these notes. What do you want to guess that stuff on his face is?
Oh, that's a really good question. I haven't even thought of it. It looks quite realistic looking. I'm guessing that it might just be literally just chunks of ham and stuff, and actual food bits.
It was in fact actual vomit.
No,
of course it's not. No, of course it's not. It's chunky apple cinnamon baby food.
Okay, all right, yeah, sure.
Ryan Johnson says he kept telling the continuity editor to add more goop, and Chris Evans was like, "This is sufficient goop now, thank you."
He begged for this part.
Yeah, he did, but I don't think at the time he realized it meant that somebody would be flinging spoonfuls of apple cinnamon baby food into his face over and over. Acting. Such a glamorous job.
Yeah.
Marta falls on the floor, knocking the chair over, and everyone reacts with disgust, especially Ransom. That means she's lying, cries Trooper Wagner.
With delight. Again, his performance never lets me down. It's very good.
The script says he's inappropriately excited.
Yeah.
and boy, just notice he can really get that across.
Yeah. He's the audience.
That means he's lying.
Yeah.
Fran is dead, and Ransom confessed to her murder on a recording. I don't see how. The fact that they show the phone recording as like, you know, crucial evidence. I confessed to it in front of 3 detectives. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, that's not hearsay.
Having a recording does make it stronger, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Ransom thinks for a split second, says "in for a penny," and grabs a knife from the knife wheel. Ooh. There's some excellent sort of like deep bassy music here to go along with this.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice it at the time.
In one job.
No, we've been through
this. Yeah, you have multiple jobs.
Yes.
And I treasure you for them.
Right.
A little less when you're constantly picking me up on my flaws, but fine. In slow motion, we see everyone react too slow as he plunges the knife into Marta's chest. Gasp.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I know what happens next, so I didn't really gasp.
We spoke about it. Yeah. It's not gasp worthy. It's gasp worthy when you see it for the first time. Yeah. These bits were shot with a very high frame rate camera, which with just the 2 of them falling back onto a mat. So they'd do a take, then they'd all gather around the monitor to see what it looked like, then like go back and do it again until they got one that they really liked.
As I understand it, when you have a really high frame rate camera, everything needs to be extra well lit.
Yeah, because you get less light through the aperture.
Yes, because it's only capturing the light for a very short time before it has to capture the next frame, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that they have to flood the whole area with light so that the slow motion looks like it's at a normal light level.
Did you ever see that camera that was capable of capturing like they did a slow-mo recording of one photon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Inexplicably in a bottle of Coke, like an empty Coke bottle filled with water, because it diffuses it a bit. I don't know where I'm going with this. Just it was interesting to look at.
I don't think I have seen it.
I don't have anything to add about it. Just Google it, I guess.
Wonderful.
Brilliant. This is why I write my notes in advance.
I live for this shit.
Back in real time, Ransom's laying on top of her, but she doesn't seem hurt at all.
For some reason, my memory of this was that she was against a wall, even though that's clearly not the case.
No, it's the floor. The floor is the wall of the bottom, as the saying goes. Curiously, he draws the knife out, revealing it's a spring-loaded prop knife.
Just like the thing Harlan said before in the film, where he's talking about Ransom and the prop knife.
That bit annoys me because it's like a weight bait. But don't at me, we're using this. But he's Harlan is talking about it metaphorically. He's saying something like, playing life like a game until you can't tell the difference between a real knife and a stage prop. And then at the end, he can't tell the difference between a real knife and a stage prop.
Yeah, it's a bit on the nose, but I mean, fine. I think I said at the time when we talked about this the first time, I'll kind of allow it just because it does actually kind of seem like the sort of thing that Harlan would say.
Yeah, it's not out of place for him, as we've discussed at length throughout the season. He tests the knife a little bit on her chest, and it just sort of like
Yeah.
The sound guy says that there are two sound effects for the knife. A meaty, real sounding one when she's first stabbed, and a spring loaded toy noise. Which in the edit they just kept going back on to make it sound sillier and sillier. Ransom says, "Shit." It's excellent line delivery of a single word.
Yeah. But at this point, the only thing he's got to gain out of this is achieving another murder in front of the police. So
yeah, but like, remember at the end of the previous episode, he goes through his lengthy diatribe about how even if it's not going to him, the Harlan's money is theirs, not hers. Right. So, I mean, if she dies before she can claim the inheritance, I guess that's a very interesting situation. I mean, I guess it would go to back to the Thrombies. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, man. I don't. Would it go? Because she doesn't have any descendants. So I would guess it would either go back to the Thrombies or more likely just be taken by the government.
Yeah, it might go to her family, maybe. I'm not sure.
I imagine it's the sort of thing that would get drawn out for a very long time in court, regardless.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless of anything, Ransom isn't seeing any of that money.
No, that's true.
So I don't think that he's doing this for money reasons. He's just purely doing this because
revenge.
He's like, oh well, before I get arrested, I can maybe get a proper murder out of this.
Yeah, the killers always develop the taste for murder, don't they? The police grab him as the camera pans up from Marta laying on her back, and we fade to black. We come back into Linda walking into Harlan's office to replace the baseball on the table. Remember the saga of the baseball from earlier?
Yes.
As she does, she finds the blank letter to Elle that Richard opened some days ago. Outside, Walt and Jacob wait by a car as Ransom is led by in handcuffs.
I did notice the score during this part because it's quite interesting here. You've almost got a little jazz trio here going on with a piano and some drums and what sounds like a double bass. It's very reminiscent to me of kind of old-fashioned mystery scoring. You could easily imagine it fitting quite well in some sort of Agatha Christie adaptation.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe he was going for as well. So he said this whole scene is in silence except for like a jazz tune.
Yeah.
Nathan Johnson, the composer, originally wrote this using only the piano, but then the ending of the movie was much too somber.
Right.
So they added in the drums and double bass to give it a bit more energy.
Yeah.
Did you notice? It's very clever here. As the policeman with Ransom walks by, Donna looks at him in shock. And in the final cut of the movie, you read that as her being shocked that Ransom is being arrested for doing a murder. But the policeman who walks by her, do you remember the deleted scene with the man waiting on the porch?
Oh right, yes.
It's him. It's the guy who was pretending to be a gangster on her doorstep. So the implication here is that Blank got that guy to dress up as a killer, lurk on her doorstep to frighten her, to put her in the right state of mood to come clean about, the whole situation.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It sort of makes me wish they hadn't taken that scene out just for this like 2 seconds of sort of horrified shock on her face as he walks by. But fortunately, because he's right next to Ransom, you just read it as her looking at Ransom.
Yeah, and even if they had kept that in, I don't know how many times I would have had to watch this film in order to pick up on that.
Yeah, I definitely would have picked it up from one of those 11 facts about Knives Out. You missed the 27th time you watched it. I can't call them out too much because A, I use them for research, and B, and B, that's sort of what this podcast is, except drawn out to an excruciating degree.
Yes. What we want to provide is a really inconvenient way to learn about films. First of all, it takes place over a number of weeks. It's split up arbitrarily into 8-minute chunks, and we proceed every discussion by at least 3/4 of an hour of discussion of anything but the actual film.
I think you mean proceed rather than proceed. Oh, you know, I've not got much going on when I have to pick you up on, on that kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks for ruining my little impromptu monologue I did just then.
Yeah, good. Fuck you, good. It's the hostile listening experience, but turned up to 12 this week.
Yes.
Or perhaps 16, because it's the 16th episode of the season.
Let's move on.
You know when you have a thought and it sort of makes your head swim when you have like these little realization. Like I had one of those this week where I was like, people listen to this podcast, and like more people listen to it than are people that I specifically forced to listen to it. So, you know,
yeah, if you're someone who listens to this podcast like regularly, like a person who has put this perhaps in their podcast app as one that it wants to download each week and listen to, just out of genuine enjoyment for this and not just out of a sense of obligation because you're one of our friends,
Firstly, thank you very much. You know,
thank you for that. Let us know. We want to know what's in your head.
Help us improve for you, the listener.
Yes, we want to understand you.
We want to pick you apart with tools.
Yes,
we don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, we don't. I think we need to make it absolutely clear that we're not going to dissect you. Or vivisect you.
I'm glad you said that because I needed clarification on whether vivisection was a subsection of dissection.
I think you've said section too many times for me to care about this anymore. Let's move on.
Let's move on to a different section of the podcast.
All right.
Ransom walks past Joni and Meg, who is distraught at something Elliot is telling her. Probably the news that Fran is dead. Richard runs up and speaks at the police, who keep walking Ransom to the car. So we've still got the sort of jazzy music, so we don't know what he's saying. Also, he's holding something in his hand, and I absolutely have no idea what it is.
Oh, yeah, we talked about this. He's kind of waving something at them. At first, when I watched this, I thought it was like a wad of cash or something.
Yeah, whenever I've seen it before, I've just sort of taken it in as a pack of cards, and I'm like, it's not, though. Why would he be holding that?
Maybe it's a wallet or a phone or something.
It's either his wallet or a phone.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a phone. Maybe it's his wallet. Weird thing to be waving at a policeman, but fine.
I mean, he's the sort of person who would just be like, I can make this go away with money, right?
They take that fairly seriously.
Yeah, but they've got no self-awareness at all.
No, this
is well established during the film, I think. So I can absolutely believe Richard as the sort of person who'd just be like, okay, how much of this cash do I need to give you not to make this arrest happen?
Please don't arrest my son.
Yeah.
As they recede into the distance, Linda puts a cigarette in her mouth and uses her lighter to reveal the invisible ink on the letter.
Yeah.
So, like, I 100 million% predicted this while we were watching the movie. And like I was really pleased because like I'm a huge dork. I think that's come up in the podcast, and I really enjoy like spy bullshit, like invisible ink and all that kind of crap. And when there's a lengthy thing where you're like, oh, you could only talk to Dad if you figure out games you can play with him, and like everyone's like, oh, metaphorical games, and then you see a blank letter. I was like, it's invisible ink in it. He's used lemon juice,
right,
or actual invisible ink.
It's still interesting
Mm.
though. I think I said when we were talking about the that conversation or that thing that she said earlier about the game that you
Yeah.
have to have with Harlan,
Yeah.
that it is kind of having a relationship at a bit of a distance. Right?
Yes. Yeah. That he's not close with any of his children.
Mm,
Probably Linda is the closest, but again,
right.
as we've learned, that he's not really prepared to engage unless she's playing his game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just it's still a bit of a relationship by proxy of this weird arrangement that they have.
Harlan's handwriting is loopy and ostentatious, but the letter reads, "My heart, it's time to cut the dead wood. He's cheating on you. I have proof I know you don't need to see. Untether yourself. It's time, Dad."
Right.
She looks up at Richard, who's shouting off screen about attorneys, with a hurt expression on her face. Richard stops talking as he realizes the game is up.
Yeah, it does look like he's kind of understood what's happened, but I don't know how he gets that just from that look.
I mean, she's holding the letter.
I guess she's holding the letter.
Clear, yeah.
Has he put it together that there was something on that letter? Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I would have if I were Linda's cheating husband, Richard, I would have destroyed the letter. But he doesn't.
Yeah, I suppose
hubris.
He did tell her that, or rather, he did tell him that he had written that letter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose he would put it together. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes him a couple of seconds, but he does figure it out. So as Jamie Lee Curtis is staring at him off screen, her mouth has fallen open and the cigarette is hanging from her bottom lip.
Yeah.
And I was watching for it to fall throughout this whole thing, and it doesn't. And I think that's very good. She's still sort of in control, even in her darkest moments.
Yeah.
Also, it's kind of interesting that Jamie Lee Curtis smokes in the film when she got Lakeith Stanfield to stop smoking on this film.
Yeah.
Marta asks Blank when he knew that she had something to do with Harlan's death, and he replies, "From the first moment he set eyes on her," and gestures to the blood droplet on her shoe. Peter, this is Sherlock Holmes level bullshit. That droplet of blood could have been from anywhere. It's smaller than the whole of a shoelace. How good is his eyesight? What is he, part eagle?
It could have been like a spot of pen or something or anything. Sometimes marks get onto something.
Yeah, if you saw me and I had a tiny red spot on me somewhere, would you assume that I'd been recently involved in a murder?
I mean, it would be a little bit difficult because you very often are wearing red clothes.
That's true. Yeah. I looked down as I said that, and I'm wearing a red t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's good advice for murderers. Wear red.
Wear red, yeah.
Or don't. I have a question for you, Peter, that I don't think you'll know the answer to because it's just a general question. Why is dried blood in movies always red when literally everyone knows it dries to brown very quickly? I mean, the spot on her shoe is still red. That's what made me think of this.
Yeah, that's true. I would say it's just because it is more obviously blood, because most people kind of clear up blood before it goes brown, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, but everybody knows that blood is red at first and then goes brown because everybody's had like a cut or had to put a plaster on it, and it's not still red inside the plaster, is it? It's a visual conceit that we still use, even though everybody knows it's not true.
Yeah, and in this case, it's actually plot relevant because I think that a little brown splodge on a shoe is even less memorable
Yes.
and noticeable than a red one.
Yeah, if you saw me and I was wearing white shoes with a little tiny brown spot on it, I'd assume it was dirt.
You got some dirt on them, didn't you? Yeah.
You were outside and you got your shoe dirty.
Mm.
Oh, Christ. Blanc tells her that she won not by playing Harlan's game, but by playing hers, and that she's a good person.
Hmm.
Do we agree with both of those points?
I think she is a good person.
Yeah.
The thing that I took away from this really is that Blanc doesn't really seem to like any of them, including Harlan. He didn't like. I don't think that he liked the fact that Harlan tried to kind of manipulate her into playing this kind of one final game.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I can't remember how the conversation specifically goes, but I remember when he's talking about when Marta and him are first talking outside at night when he's smoking a cigar, and she says, "Did you know Harlan?" He says, "My father knew him. My father respected him." You know, he kind of evades the subject, doesn't he? He doesn't specifically say, "I knew Harlan," and he doesn't, but he also kind of like doesn't. Yeah, I think he thinks everything would have been better if Harlan hadn't come up with this ludicrous game.
Yes.
Marta asks Blanc if she should help them, and he says that he has his opinion, but that she's going to follow her own heart, and he walks away. Do you think she helps them?
I think she does.
I think she does. I think she'd give them some money. Not all the money, but some of the money. Yeah. Marta steps outside into the hall, draped in a blanket and holding a coffee mug, to look at the portrait of Harlan. He's smiling here. It's another of those changed portrait shots.
Right.
But it's probably the most obvious because the camera actually lingers on it for once.
Right.
Outside, Ransom is about to be pushed into a cop car when he turns and sees Marta standing on the balcony looking down at him.
It's an interesting look that he gives back there. It's seeming to acknowledge that she won it, so it's almost a kind of look of respect.
Yeah, it's sort of like a "you have bested me, opponent."
Right.
He's like he's going to come back for more, but obviously he won't because he's going to be executed for murder. Oh boy. That's a thing that comes up in the Columbo podcast, isn't it? Which is a great podcast that we should probably plug because we both enjoyed it. It's over now, and the two fellas who done it have moved on to other things, which are also good podcasts. But if you like investigatory stuff, the Columbo podcast is well worth listening to.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely bring that up at one point in that podcast where they're like, almost all of these people that Columbo brings down are going to be executed for doing a murder, which puts a slightly different spin on them sometimes.
Does California have the death penalty?
Yes, I believe it does. Yep.
And where is this set?
Where's Knives Out set?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Boston. Or Massachusetts.
Do they have the death penalty in Massachusetts?
I'm going to say yes while I Google it.
All right. Okay.
Could you fill?
Just imagine that I'm playing the drums like that person in the score who's going a little wild on the drums behind the piano.
Oh wow! No, they don't. They don't.
Okay.
Massachusetts does not. So he's okay. He's just going to go to prison for life.
Yes.
Cool. That's better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're not that sort of podcast. Let's not get into this.
If you have an opinion about whether it's better or not, don't write in. I don't want to know it.
I will delete these emails unread. Richard turns around, shaking his head, revealing a fresh black eye.
which it's a slightly subtle one, so I've never really noticed it before.
Interestingly, it was added in post. It's visual effects.
Ah, right, okay.
It's not makeup on him. Ryan Johnson thought it would be nice if you could see that Richard had received an immediate comeuppance for his cheating. Richard sees Marta standing there, and the whole family turns to look at her. So Marta's holding the coffee cup in her hand that we're going to get a big reveal of in a couple of seconds.
Yes.
And originally, all of the text on the mug was visible. But they realized it was more impactful to end with the text, so they edited the position of her hand in post.
Oh, right, okay.
Nice little touch. Marta lifts the mug of coffee to take a sip, and her hand is now covering all the text on it except for my house.
Yeah.
Not deliberate, but a nice little vindictive thing to end on.
Yeah, really good final shot. Very memorable.
Very, very good. Yeah, you definitely called it out in the last episode, and it sticks in the mind.
Yeah.
This mug was specifically manufactured for the film, but replicas are now available.
Of course.
The music raises, and we get a Knives Out title card, and the credits roll.
What song is that playing over the credits?
The song we're listening to here is Sweet Virginia by the Rolling Stones. When asked during a Q&A session how Ryan Johnson picked that song, he said, expensively.
Yeah.
Licensing music is expensive. Especially famous songs.
It very much is. I like that we get the portraits during the credits.
Yeah, the credits play out as little portraits, very, very reminiscent of Clue, which ends in exactly the same way, except in Clue, they're photographs, and here they're sort of like oil paintings.
Yeah.
The portraits here, done in the style of the Clue characters, are done by Nathan Johnson's brother, Zach.
Okay.
Keep the whole thing in the family, right? Yeah, it's a really nice touch to see them, and obviously they're in sort of more flamboyant outfits that they used on the sort of advertising hoardings, where they've got like bright red and bright green costumes, sort of like the traditional Clue pieces.
Yeah, it's a really nice sort of touch. I'm glad they did it. I hope they do something similar for the next one. Maybe make it a sort of little motif.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited for Glass Onion at this point.
Soon now, right?
Yeah, it's 3 months away.
Yeah.
So that credit ending brings us to the end of the movie Knives Out and this season of the podcast.
Oh right.
So the credits roll, and we read them all and we enjoy them. Do you remember when we first did this for the thing and I was going to write
ding?
I said the thing.
Yeah. When we first did it for
the thing,
for you talking about the film. Okay, I'm sorry.
I demand this ding be rescinded at once, sir.
I immediately and unreservedly rescind my ding.
I think you might have to write me a letter of apology.
I will not do that.
I know.
Do continue.
Yeah. So when we did this for the first season, John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing, is that better for you?
Ding! Oh, sorry, no.
Fuck you. Yeah. For the end credits, I was going to write a little, like, one sentence about everybody in the credits, and then we realized how preposterously difficult that would be.
Too many people.
Yeah, it was like 150 something names, I believe, and modern film a lot more. So. So again, we always like to sum these seasons up by saying, like, thank you to everybody who worked on the movie, because I mean, we call out, like, the director, the DOP, the actors who are obviously the most visible faces of the film, but like literally everyone involved can be really proud that they worked on something and it came off really well, and like loads of people have enjoyed it.
Yes, making these making these kind of productions, which are even, I would say, compared to the last two that we did, this one is relatively simple in the way that it's shot and the number of effects that are involved in that sort of thing. But even the simplest kind of version of filmmaking it's incredibly complicated. There's so much involved that I have a great deal of respect for people who are good at what they do with this.
And video effects, especially. I mean, like, you don't realize just they're so good at their job that you don't realize how many video effect shots are used in films now.
Yeah, I mean, quite a number, even in this one. As we've talked about, the paintings and things like that, and it takes an awful lot of people to pull one of these off, basically. And I it's like games as well. Once I've finished once I've finished playing a game, especially one that I really enjoyed, I like to just sit through the credits. It's not like I'm going to remember all of the names. I barely know the names of my good friends, to be quite honest. But I like to just take the moment to acknowledge all of the effort that went into it, and so yeah. Thanks everyone who made this film that we enjoyed.
It's interesting that you mention the names because since starting this podcast, I've actually become more insufferable in that now I'm genuinely starting to remember people's names from the credits, like for what they did on other films. It's like I was watching a film the other night and I was like, "Oh, Albert Whitlock, he was the matte painter for The Thing."
Yeah. No, I'd never. It takes me so long, and as soon as I don't need to remember a name anymore, as well, it just goes.
Yes,
like I was thinking of some people that I worked with, like every day, but 2 jobs ago.
Yeah,
and I don't have their names anymore. I don't have their names anymore.
Listeners, if you used to work with Peter 2 jobs ago, and
I'm sorry. It's not that I didn't like you. It's just that
it's just that you're unmemorable.
My brain has gone, well, no need for those names anymore. Sorry, you're gone. Make way for whatever 10 names I currently need to remember.
So,
yeah.
Peter, if you were seeing this for the first time, no, I think after the credits have rolled, I can't ask you those questions. That's a rule. Right?
You know what? I remember the name of my first boss a couple of jobs ago, but that's because his name is Peter.
Did you go into the office and say, Peter?
Don't remember his last name. It wasn't Silk.
Oh, God.
But yes, anyway, to guide us slowly back on topic. Yeah, I won't remember what any of these people, who these people are, what their names are, but it just feels nice to watch the credits and go, yeah, well done everyone. Because I feel like there is a tendency to put all of the attention on the actors for obvious reasons, but also all of the attention on like the director as well. And
I mean, we're really guilty of that because we are always like Rian Johnson's Knives Out because they're the figurehead, but also not the whole story.
Yeah. Aside from the writers, the directors, the actors, you got just so many people who are involved, and not even just involved doing little things for it. Some of it is really significant to setting the mood, and like the person that is in charge of finding locations
Yeah.
for the film. Maybe so much of the film would feel so much different if different locations had been found. And as well, obviously the director's involved in the casting, but there are people who are casting people who are involved in this as well. And so without them, the film's going to feel very, very different. And it becomes a bit overwhelming when you start thinking about all of the different bits of effort that are needed in order to make one of these films come off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have nothing but respect for people who work on films, which does make me feel bad when we talk about something like The Interview. And I was like, it's not a bad film at all. It's everyone in it acts very well. It's just very workmanlike.
Yeah.
I guess that's just how things end. Sometimes people like things and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people can put a great deal of effort in and can believe in a project and it can come off successfully, but it just doesn't hit on the same level as something else. That's okay. Like, it's not necessarily a condemnation of their abilities or anything like that. It's just like not everything can knock it out of the park.
No, of course.
Right. And some things are. There's a film that I think we're both interested in watching at some point soon that we're not expecting to be very good, right?
Oh, are we talking about Blackbird?
And we are talking about Blackbird.
Oh
yeah.
God, I don't know how our carefully phrased disclaimer comes out when the film is basically an auteur director's the phrase passion project is in my head, but that's not the right phrase. Vanity project. That's
there
the
you
one.
Go. Yeah.
when basically you've got a lot of money and you're like, what if I made a movie where I was James Bond? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like in this sort of situation where it's entirely a vanity thing, it's you can see the whole breadcrumb trail of things that led to this being made, and it's just quite an inherently funny situation of Michael Flatley just deciding years and years after Riverdance that he wanted to be James Bond and making a film about it, and all signs pointing it towards it being very bad. I think in that sort of situation, it's still acknowledging that to put one of these together at all is pretty difficult and takes a lot of effort. I think we can indulge in a bit of laughing at Michael Flatley. Who entirely brought this on himself.
I realized I needed to see the movie when I watched the trailer, and the trailer ends with him saying, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, and I will sin again." I'm like, it's so fantastic. I, at the risk of diverting entirely into Blackbird territory right now, I'm stealing this from someone on Twitter. I just need to look up his name. It's Shockproof Beats, Seamus O'Reilly, who you may know as the person who did ketamine in front of the Prime Minister of Ireland. Yeah, it's a great story. You should go look at his Twitter. But he went to see it, and the cinema he saw it in had a drinking game for Blackbird. Do you want to go through it quickly for you, Peter?
Go on then.
Drink every time he has a new hat. When he changes his hat on screen, down your drink. Every time he says Blackbird, chieftains, or slick. Anytime there's superfluous Gaelic. An ominous tracking shot. every time there's a flashback, when an outrageously hot woman hits on him or checks him out. Every time there's a weird cutaway in the middle of a very different set piece. Oh, what a treat. We have to do this movie, right? Don't we?
I mean, are you saying we have to do it for 8-minute movies? Because I don't know.
I mean, listeners, if you want us to laugh at a film for 16 weeks.
It seems to make you happy, so I'll think about it.
The only problem is there's no 8 pun. We can't do it. That's a rule, I guess.
If we switch to German, we can make it Blachtbird.
I'm not learning German just for this podcast. Wo ist die Bahnhof? Oh God!
We could do Blackbird, but just change the B's to 8.
How do you think I would say that?
I think you'd say Blackbird, but the B's are 8s.
I love it. Okay, that's season 4 in the bag. Okay, so briefly, at the risk of getting this back on topic, I will ask you, what did you think of the movie? What did you think? What was your final assessment of the whole thing altogether?
Well, I mean, it hasn't changed from the previous times that I've watched it. I think it's a great film. It's one of my favorites of recent years. I like you cannot wait until the sequel. I think that this will, for a long time, be one of my favorite films.
Well, I agree. I really like Knives Out. I'm really looking forward to the sequel. So, listeners, as we draw this podcast to a close, if you have any questions or comments, if they're not about how I don't know where everything in the country is, or indeed the world, you may email us at podcast@8minutemovies.co.uk. And if you liked this show, you should tell a friend or leave a comment wherever you listen to it, like on Apple Podcasts. I believe you can do it there. It really does help us raise engagement, and what the algorithm decides is all that matters here in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And for the last time this season, I can be found on Twitter at Kieran J. Walsh. And you, Peter?
That's Kestrel Pie. That's Kestrel like the bird, and Pi like the irrational number. And also, people should probably follow the Twitter account for this podcast, right? Because that's where they might find out when and how the next one is happening.
It's a very good point that you bring that up, because I had that thought in bed like a couple of weeks ago, that we plug our own individual ones, but not the actual Twitter account for the podcast, which is languishing with like 7 followers or something.
Yeah, you should follow that, because it will tell you when the next podcast is happening.
Yeah, it's really good. We definitely should have been mentioning it at some point in the preceding 40 episodes of this show.
Well, we got there in the very end.
We didn't, because we didn't tell them what the Twitter account handle is.
Right. Well, let's tell them now.
It's 8-minute movies, but the 8 is the number. Yeah.
All right. So the number 8, and then minute movies.
Yeah.
Follow that, and at some point when we have an understanding of what the next season of this is going to be and when it's going to start, we will let you know via that.
Okay, listeners. Once again, we're sorry. And also thank you for listening to this podcast, and just being you do you. We love you, no matter who or what you are.
Marvelous.
Goodbye, listeners. Goodbye.